organizer. I'm also a brand new rank and file member of the California Faculty Association. Sorry, should have said that ahead of time. And I'm going to introduce one of my co-facilitators, Connie White. Connie is a longtime Labor Party advocate in the United States, a political analyst, a theorist, and a political organizer, both nationally and internationally for 3 decades. Connie was raised in LA, was a delegate from LA to the 1996 founding convention of the Labor Party USA. Connie's a member of the LSIP Continuations Committee and an organizer of LSIP LA. So Connie, take it away.
Okay, hello, can everyone hear me? Hopefully you can. Thanks, Coral. Thanks for that welcome and the reminder of the Zoom etiquette.
Sí, se escucha en español, gracias.
Great, thank you. Let me get on video here so you all can see me. Hi. Welcome. I'm so glad that you guys joined us for this Zoom meeting. And we in LSIP, we wanted to have this meeting as a support for the fight for citizenship for all. One of the organizations that some of our members work with is called Papeles para Todos. And so that was one of the things that was in our thoughts when we decided to organize this forum on immigration. The title of our forum was, as you saw, The Fight for Citizenship for All, but it also included why there could be no reconciliation with the Democratic Party. Now, for us in LSIP, that's a very important caveat because we are organizing nationally, locally and nationally. We advocate the organizing of labor community coalitions and assemblies so that we can build a national labor party in the United States that will advocate for the interests of the working class in the United States. Currently, we have no advocates in the halls of governance, as I like to say. We have no advocates for working class interests in the United States. We have no advocates in Congress. We have no advocates. And when I say advocates, I'm talking about consistent advocates who, what they think about when they think about legislation and about governing, they think about the interests that that the working class interests are prioritized. Granted, we, the working class, are the majority. Okay, so why shouldn't our interests be prioritized? But in fact, not only are our interests not prioritized in the halls of governance, but they are actually minimized and totally forgotten, actually, because those who govern in the interests of capital, govern in the interests of the ruling class, I like to say, govern in the interest of the 1 percenters, somebody say, govern in the interests of that are not working class interests. And so our interests are always pushed to the side, ignored, forgotten, and even, stifled. So that is our interest in LSIP, and that is building these labor community coalitions locally and then nationally as well. And so that's who we are. That's what we're all about. So let's just sort of get into our speakers. The first speaker is Luis Angel. And hold on a minute, let me switch screens here. So our first speaker is, where is my notes? Okay, sorry about that. First speaker, Luis Angel. He's an undocumented activist that comes out of the historic immigrant rights mobilizations of 2006. In 2015, Luis Angel became the first undocumented person in the country to obtain a law license and to represent immigrants against detentions and deportations, something he has done under the Obama, the Trump, and the Biden administrations. He is He is a DACA recipient and a member of the movement for Papers for All, Papeles para Todos. Go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, thank you so much, Connie. I want to thank the Laboring Community for an Independent Party for organizing this forum. And I want to also say that it's incredibly humbling and a privilege to be on this panel with so many active organizers in the immigrant rights movement. And we'll hear from those that are mobilizing right now as we speak to fight for citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country, as well as those who are fighting inside detention centers in the worst pandemic in a century, and who are literally fighting for their lives, as well as the labor leaders and those fighting for public education. And very exciting to be sharing the platform with all of you, those fighting for Haitian immigrants who are being disproportionately deported under the Biden administration. So really looking forward to having this discussion with all of you and to really discuss concretely today, how can we collectively address the problems that are facing not just immigrants, but working class people in this country. And I think having a discussion around immigrant rights is an important place to start. And I'll say this to start off, that there is no sector of the working class for who the need for independent working class politics is more salient than for immigrants. And the reason for this, I think we can go into a little bit of history here, but let me just go into what's going on currently right now in Congress and what's going on with the fight for citizenship for all. If people remember, the Biden administration and the Democratic Party promised immigration reform and promised a pathway to citizenship within the first 100 days in office. Now, for many of you who have been involved in the immigrant rights movement, this is not the first time that these promises have been made. The Obama administration back in 2008 made the same promise, him and Biden, of a pathway to citizenship within the first 100 days. Of course, we all know what happened, which is that nearly 3 million undocumented immigrants were deported by the Obama administration. In many ways, history is repeating itself today. So how so? Despite this promise by the Biden administration, despite the Democratic Party having a majority in both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and in the Senate, and controlling the executive branch, the Democratic Party has now gone back on this promise for a pathway to citizenship. In particular, we've seen that in the House of Representatives, for example, and in the Senate, there's a special process that allows the Democratic Party with these simple majorities, the process that's called the budget and reconciliation process. It allows the Democrats with a simple majority in the Senate to get around the filibuster and to be able to enact change for immigrants and for working class people in this country. And we'll hear from other folks on this panel about what that has meant, for example, like issues like the PRO Act, issues like climate justice, issues around free community college, which the Democratic Party has also gone back on. But as it relates to immigration reform and to a pathway to citizenship, despite the Democrats having a clear mandate, and despite the Democrats having the authority in both houses of Congress to be able to enact a pathway to citizenship, what have they done? In the House of Representatives, last month, the Democrats passed their version of the Build Back Better Act, or the reconciliation bill. Notably, in that bill, excluded a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. Instead, what they included in that bill was a form of second-class status for immigrants who had arrived in the United States after January 1st of 2011, a temporary status, a status that would not lead to either a green card, lawful permanent status, or citizenship, but rather it's a status called parole in place that would give people a temporary protection, a work authorization, which will expire after 10 years. After 5 years, Immigrants who would qualify would have to renew it, and it would expire after 10 years. What has the immigrant rights movement, what has been the response to this? And this is really important because I think we're living in a particular moment right now when we're seeing the increasing self-organization of undocumented immigrants in this country. And we'll hear more from other panelists about some of these activities. But just to highlight a number of things, that the immigrant rights movement has categorically rejected the second-class status, which is temporary, which is not a pathway to citizenship, and which is a way to continue to exploit and oppress this sector of the working class, which is undocumented immigrants in this country. And not only have immigrants rejected it, but they have mobilized actively. And we're seeing some of the biggest mobilizations since the historic mobilizations of May 1st of 2006. And just I'll give you a few examples. In September 18th, there was over 10,000 undocumented immigrants that went to Washington, D.C. and mobilized and demanded that Democrats provide a pathway to citizenship, that they override the parliamentarian in the Senate, which is their latest excuse for not providing a pathway to citizenship. Here in California, undocumented families occupied the Golden Gate Bridge on September 30th, risking arrest, risking deportation, to make clear that they demand, that they need and deserve a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants. Just last week, the Movement for Papers for All and immigrant rights organizations across the country mobilized again in Washington, D.C., with about 4,000 people, again demanding that the Senate reject the version that came out of the House of Representatives, which does not include a pathway to citizenship, and that they include a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants. These are massive mobilizations taking place not just in Washington, D.C., but across the country. As we speak right now, there are undocumented activists in Washington, D.C. that were arrested because they are confronting the Democratic Party and their latest betrayal when it comes to immigrant rights. There were immigrants that were arrested in September and October in Washington, D.C. for the same reasons. And so we're seeing an increasing confrontation between immigrants on the one hand and the Democratic Party that once again is looking to go back on this important demand. But it's not just on the question of citizenship. We've seen it on the question, for example, on the Remain in Mexico policy, which the Biden administration has continued to implement and in fact has now expanded, a policy that was enacted under the Trump administration and which is denying both the statutory right to apply for asylum, but also the international right of refugees to seek asylum in this country. The Biden administration has expanded this. Other things that the Biden administration has done, for example, when the Biden administration came into office, there were about 13,000 people in immigration detention. Now, I want to just contextualize this number. Under the Obama administration, on any given day, there were approximately 50,000 undocumented immigrants in immigration detention. For those in the immigrant rights movement know that immigrant detention, over 80% of people in immigrant detention are in facilities that are run by for-profit detention centers. People are companies and corporations that are making record profits off of detaining immigrants. Under the Obama administration, this detention machine was expanded. The Trump administration did the same thing, inherited the system. But under the pandemic, we saw something very important happen. And we're going to have a panelist that's going to speak about this, which is that hundreds of immigrants inside detention went on hunger strikes and labor strikes during the pandemic when they were needlessly being exposed to this virus and needlessly were dying inside detention centers. And a hunger strike wave spread from California to Louisiana, to Georgia, to Colorado, you name it. Immigrants were sounding the alarm and actually were victorious in many ways. We're able to achieve and win court orders that ruled that during the pandemic, immigration detention was such a threat to life that it was unconstitutional. And immigration detention was reduced from the 50,000 every single day to about 13,000 people.
Hey, Luis Angel, are you able to begin to wrap up?
Thank you so much. To about 13,000 people when Biden came into office. Biden has now revamped immigrant detention despite the ongoing pandemic, and these numbers are now up to 27,000. And here in Northern California, he's seeking to repopulate detention centers that immigrants were able to close in recent months. I name all of these things because the need for independent politics in the immigrant rights movement is a question of life and death. Immigrants pay over $120 billion in local, state, and federal taxes every single year without a pathway to citizenship. And we're seeing immigrants in the streets right now demanding that they get a pathway to citizenship, demanding an end to detention, demanding a right for refugees. And the reality is, and increasingly we as immigrants are facing this, is that we need our own political party. We need a party that represents the interests of immigrants, that represents the interests of working class people. And so I thank LSIP, I thank everybody here for being part of this conversation, because we can't repeat the mistakes of the past. We can't repeat what happened in May 1st, 2006, when there were millions of people that mobilized for immigration reform in 2006, and the immigration rights movement was co-opted into the Democratic Party, and the immigrant rights movement has been recovering since. 4 million deportations under Obama and Trump, and now increasing under Biden as well. And so I look forward to collaborating with all of you and helping build these grassroots movements and increasing the self-organization that's already happening at the grassroots and linking it to a fight for political power over the long term. So thank you so much. I am now going to introduce, and have the privilege to introduce our next speaker. Her name is Yurina Guzman. Yurina Guzman is an immigrant leader from the movement for Papers for All, or for Citizenship for All. She was involved in this occupation on the Golden Gate Bridge. She's going to Washington, D.C. to keep protesting for a pathway to citizenship. And so with, great pleasure, I present to you Yurina Guzman. Welcome, Yurina.
Muchas gracias, Luis Ángel. Buenas tardes a todos. ¿Listo? Muy buenas tardes, gracias Luis Ángel. Mi nombre es Yurina Guzmán y soy organizadora con Luna, Latinos Unidos por una Nueva América, y organizadora en el movimiento Papeles para Todos. Voy a explicar un poco de cómo iniciamos, ¿verdad? Durante la pandemia nos dimos cuenta que ICE estaba atacando a nuestras comunidades. Fue cuando nos dimos cuenta de que teníamos que organizar y movilizar, pero de una manera seria y de una manera con poder. Tenemos que usar las mejores herramientas para ir al frente en la batalla, ¿verdad? Nos estuvieron llamando trabajadores esenciales durante la pandemia. ¿Y qué fue lo que nos dieron? No tuvimos derecho a ninguna ayuda del gobierno. No teníamos ni siquiera aseguranza médica algunos. Nuestras comunidades estaban siendo desplazadas porque durante ese periodo no pudieron ir a trabajar, o algunos pudieron ir poniendo en riesgo sus vidas. Las comunidades están siendo desplazadas porque no tienen el dinero para pagar sus rentas. La comunidad inmigrante es el que tiene más altas muertes durante la pandemia. Eso fue lo que nos despertó. Y supimos que si de verdad no organizábamos y no movilizábamos, íbamos a perderlo todo, hasta nuestras vidas. Ahora mismo estamos enfrentando la traición de los demócratas, en donde prometieron ciudadanía para los 11 millones en los primeros 100 días. Y eso no está pasando. Decir que nos organizamos, quiero decir que establecimos fechas de nuestras reuniones. Organizamos una junta general y desarrollamos comités para dividirnos las tareas. Construimos esta junta y nos reunimos cada 2 veces por mes. Cada 2 veces, cada un miércoles. Después de haber elaborado un reporte político. ¿Y por qué hicimos este reporte político? ¿Por qué hicimos este reporte político? Porque queríamos saber qué en el pasado no había funcionado para traerlo al presente y poder saber cómo ir adelante en este proceso. Educarnos políticamente en muchos aspectos, primeramente identificando quién nos oprime para poder agarrar base e ir adelante. Después de esto, familias, en el septiembre 30, familias indocumentadas tomaron el puente arriesgándolo todo, arriesgando deportaciones, arriesgando arrestos, arriesgando siendo despedidos de su trabajo. Queríamos gritar y queríamos hacernos presentes diciendo, queremos papeles para todos y queremos que sobrepasen a la parlamentaria porque ellos tienen el poder. Ahora mismo la presidencia se está enfrentando a una comunidad fuerte y a una comunidad educada, a una comunidad que está cansada, a una comunidad que quiere ir adelante con mucha fuerza. Hemos elaborado también nuestra plataforma política y quiero decir que esto lo hemos hecho entre todos. Todo el movimiento ha puesto su granito de arena y ha puesto una letra, una estrofa. Todos han puesto su granito de arena para poder crear este documento base, que es nuestro papel de presentación para otros movimientos, ¿verdad? Los próximos años creo que serán claves para papeles para todos. Y la pregunta será, ¿cómo vamos a ganar esta lucha? Que es una lucha que vemos bastante grande, pero a la vez, uniéndonos con otras luchas, creo que vamos a tener mucho poder. Seguir como movimiento independiente es muy importante y sobre todo no depender de los demócratas que sabemos que nunca han estado de nuestro lado y que nunca quieren de verdad representarnos y nunca lo van a hacer. Comprender que la lucha de la clase trabajadora es la verdadera lucha. Eso es muy importante. Papeles para Todos tiene una meta y esta meta es la huelga general. Sabemos que cuando le pegamos al gobierno en el bolsillo, le damos en lo que más les duele. ¿Por qué? Porque nosotros, los indocumentados, los 11 millones o más, nos ven como sus esclavos, ¿verdad? Y tenemos que romper con ese nombre. Tenemos de verdad que ir hacia adelante y decir, puedo trabajar en construir alianzas con la clase trabajadora y desarrollar mi derecho y nuestros derechos que tanto nos han negado, ¿verdad? ¿Cómo vamos a llegar a la huelga general? Creando alianzas, educándonos políticamente, de verdad saliendo a llevar ese mensaje. Y un mensaje muy poderoso es que el pueblo salva al pueblo, porque no hay nadie más que nos pueda dar eso. Y lo estamos viendo ahora. Apoyándonos unos a otros como movimientos independientes. Entre más independencia tengamos, más poder tenemos. Nada va a ser imposible si estamos unidos. Creamos también un documento en donde ponemos todo nuestro empeño y toda nuestra misión y toda nuestra visión. Papeles para Todos reprueba toda forma de opresión. Opresión a la mujer, opresión a la clase trabajadora. Peleamos por nuestros derechos. ¿Cuáles son estos derechos? Derecho a una vivienda digna, derecho a ir a la escuela y derecho a tener una vivienda. Derecho a todo lo que nos traiga beneficio, y eso no lo vamos a poder tener si no nos unimos. Quiero decir que estoy muy contenta de estar aquí y conocerlos a todos y sobre todo de poder hacer las conexiones para unificar el movimiento. Papeles para Todos está aquí para ustedes. Es un movimiento que los necesita y nosotros a ustedes. Queremos seguir independientes, queremos seguir poderosos y queremos también saber que no somos 11 millones, creo que ahora somos más. Queremos parar las deportaciones, queremos cerrar los centros de detención. Queremos, como ya lo dije antes, derechos plenos de nuestros derechos humanos, ¿verdad? La importancia de los
Irina, are you
movimientos.
able to begin to close?
Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, Irina. Thank you, Irina. I now will be introducing our next speaker, and also really honored to be able to introduce Joe Mejia. Joe Mejia has really gone through it inside the system. He's fought the immigration detention system from inside and has been able to win his freedom, organizing some massive hunger strikes that again spread across the country. So my pleasure to introduce Joe, a poet, an activist, a survivor, and now an educator, continuing to fight for the liberation of the immigrants that remain in detention. So welcome, Joe. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Luis. And okay, can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, everybody, for this space, for this platform. I would like to start this off with a poem that I actually wrote while I was in Yuba, and it was published. This was back in July of 2020. It's called Detention Pandemic. I have been in ICE detention for 32 months now, and let me tell you, it does not get any easier. In the past 32 months, I have been in 3 detention facilities in California, and Yuba County Jail is by far the worst. When I think about it, it makes sense why it remains in business. $6.5 million a year for the ICE contract, yet we can't get adequate hygiene, decent clothes, a clean housing area, shoes to wear, exercise equipment, basic medical attention, not even a pillow. The list is endless. Most of the staff are very unprofessional with a "this is my house" attitude, and if you don't like it, don't come to jail attitude. This very attitude and environment makes most people lose their patience, so they just sign for their deportation. So if you're in the deportation business, this substandard, inhumane cage is the perfect tool to make sure we don't fight for our deportation. Recently, the entire world has been devastated by this deadly virus. Around the world is the same sentiment: unity and to care for our loved ones and our neighbors. Well, not if you're in detention. It seems that we are subhuman. Even in these dire times, we are not worthy or deserving of being with our family. Now we just have one more thing to worry about, one more reason to just sign our deportation. The entire nation is told to keep social distance, but for us in detention, that's impossible. These cages, tanks, and housing areas aren't big enough to keep 6 feet apart. No matter what we do, we are always in close quarters. Sure, they may have released some of the high-risk detainees, but not because it was the right thing to do or because they were compelled by human kindness. The only reason why they released them or released us is because they were compelled by the courts. They were mandated by the courts. Let's be honest. They say that they are detaining us for the safety of the community, that they are doing a good deed by keeping us off the streets. The truth is, we are just a paycheck to Yuba. If you were to take away that hefty $6.5 million paycheck, they would kick us right out with no concern for the community. They would no longer be interested in their good deed. The truth is, we are not a threat to the community, but if we were released, we would be a threat to their pockets, a $6.5 million threat. The COVID-19 pandemic is horrifying, and I wouldn't wish this virus on anyone. My heart goes out to the family members who may have lost a loved one to this illness. I give my utmost respect to those in the front lines fighting this, from medical staff to volunteers providing food and services to all. So many families are ripped apart by this deportation machine, and just like COVID-19, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Detention at Yuba is cruel and inhumane. It deserves attention and justice. Please take a stand against this discrimination. Help us end this division of race. Let us unite as one race, the human race. This detention pandemic must not and cannot continue. Thank you all who have helped voice the voiceless in detention. your fellow human, Joe. That was a poem that I wrote while I was in Cuba. Now, as you guys know, my name is Joe Mejia, and I'm a poet, I'm an educator, I'm an activist who fought from the inside detention during the pandemic and during the mass strikes that spread inside ICE facilities across the country. We were fighting for our lives. What I tell you today is from direct firsthand experience. Just a little background about me. I came to this country as a child at the age of about 4. After my family fled persecution from El Salvador, they went to Mexico. Between 2017 and 2020, I was in ICE detention for 34 months, despite successfully completing my prison sentence. There's no real legitimate reason why I should have been doing more time after completing my sentence. After I completed extensive rehabilitation, after I earned my GED, and after I obtained my paralegal license, but I did. ICE decided to punish me again and detain me for nearly 3 more years. This current administration, like many others before, has failed us, mainly our immigrant, minority, and low-income community. Decades of discrimination and economic disparities, which its effects are directly seen by the gross and inhumane pipeline between over-policing in our communities and the unjust criminal justice system, and the immigration deportation machine. Since the Clinton administration, we have been nothing more than a political ragdoll, tossed around and torn apart. Far before that, all we were was free labor to their benefit without dignity. I speak about this with such a heavy heart because I have lived and suffered this inhumane justice myself. I have lived and survived these modern day concentration camps. After months of suffering inside ICE detention, myself and many others like me decided it was time to rise up and come up from the shadows. With the help of many from the free world, we began to organize hunger strikes that spread statewide and nationally, which sparked the flame of justice for us all. Immigrants were dying inside detention centers from COVID, and COVID was spreading like wildfire, threatening the lives of us all. And just so that corporations could make record profits by detaining us. Many people don't know this, but most immigrants detained in this country are detained in facilities run by nonprofit organizations and corporations. ICE and these corporations treated us as a dollar sign in the midst of the worst pandemic in a century. We were denied masks, basic hygiene products. We were crowded in facilities with no real access to medical care. I witnessed people collapse, begging for help, and guards just looking the other way. This is why I, together with hundreds of immigrants across the country, went on hunger strike and labor strikes inside ICE detention in 2020 and 2021. From across California to Washington to Louisiana to Georgia, we were demanding life, medical care, and freedom. This is why I helped lead a hunger strike right here in Northern California while I was in Yuba County Jail, which has a contract with ICE. We faced retaliation and solidarity and solitary confinement, but we fought on. Our movement inside ICE jails exposed ICE detention nationally. It exposed the reality that ICE detention is a death sentence and that ICE is becoming the largest exporter of COVID-19 around the world. Through its deportation, due to our collective struggles of labor strikes and hunger strikes, I and thousands of immigrants were released by the courts due to the significant risk of death inside of these detention centers. When Biden came into office in 2021, and for the first time in over 30 years, the ICE detention population had decreased from 50,000 under the Obama administration, and it dropped down to 13,000 at the end of the Trump administration, demonstrating that we can win and that ICE detention is absolutely unnecessary. But when Biden came back, since he came into office, despite his promises, the Biden administration is actively and aggressively repopulating all these for-profit detention centers to the point that ICE detention has doubled since he came into office. ICE detention has increased under Biden from the record low 13,000 when he came into office to nearly 27,000 immigrants in detention as we speak right now. The ICE detention centers where I won my freedom, Yuba County has 0 immigrants at this time, and Biden is actively trying to reopen these detention centers as we speak. The Biden administration argues that we are a threat to the community and tries to lock us up for civil matters that does not truly warrant this cruel and unusual punishment. Yet last year, they released the majority of us from detention because of the pandemic, and the immigrant community has not burned down the nation like they would like us to believe. The
Hey,
only
Joe,
real threat.
Joe, could I get your final thoughts?
Thank you. The only real threat here is the financial loss to all detention facilities. The financial loss and financial interest to the government is the only real threat. This is why the same flame that inspired us to strike inside these facilities has lit up a new movement for the demand of new political party, a party that is for us and by us all, that is accountable to us, no more empty promises. The question we must ask ourselves, the issue that must be addressed to bring real justice to life is, which direction should the immigration movement go? Our two current political parties have proven to us that they are not willing to make the necessary changes because they are unaccountable for these same corporations that benefit from immigration detention. So it is time for us as a united labor force and a united community to reach and construct an independent party that will look after the real needs of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Very powerful. Thank you for sharing your testimony. Now introducing, really pleased to have Berthany DuPont, editor of Haiti Liberté, a mass circulation weekly newspaper published in Brooklyn, New York, that is distributed widely in Haiti, and in the Haitian diaspora in the US and Canada. Each issue of this newspaper has sections in French, Creole, and English. So again, welcome, Berthany, and thank you for being here.
Bertoni just arrived about while you were doing the introduction. So Bertoni, are you available? Are you here? And I don't see any video or sound link. So perhaps we can. Yeah. Yes, but I don't even see a muted microphone, which is weird in the participants. Oh, yep, I see now, but can't hear you still.
Maybe, well, I think what's going on, Berthany, you might need to activate the audio and the video. So while we figure that out, we'll just go on to the next speaker if that's okay.
Hello?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, welcome, Berthany.
And Bertoni, you will have 8 minutes, and you'll see a yellow screen at 2 minutes and a red screen at 1 minute warning if you go on gallery view. And there you go. You see Daniel's screen is yellow. So 2 minute warning, and then red is 1 minute. Thank you.
Do you hear me very well? Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this great meeting. And the environmental, social, and political conditions in Haiti have long postponed congressional interest in U.S. policy on Haitian migrants. Beginning about 60 years ago, just after the Cuban Revolution, U.S. capitalists began a second push into Haiti following their first push during the 1915 to 1934 U.S. military occupation. At that time, Haiti was ruled by the dictator François Duvalier, who was hostile to the influx of foreign capital, which might displace the semi-federal big landowners known as the Grandons, whom he represents. But in 1969, President Richard Nixon sent capitalist icon Nelson Rockefeller as an emissary to negotiate a deal to set up cheap labor assembly factories in Haiti. This deal was the beginning of the end of Haitian agriculture and that industry as it exists in the 20th century. Since that Washington was destroying the Haitian agriculture, it was smashing the Haitian state as well. Haitian tried to resist the American plan, as it was called in those days. The overwhelming elected former Liberation Television Vice Jean-Bertrand Aristide who proposed nationalist policy like land reform and protecting state industries like the phone company electric, and protecting state industry like the phone company electric and restatement. But the US formed coup d'etat against him after his electoral victory in 1990 and also in 2000, followed by 2 foreign military occupations. The last one that ended until 2 years ago in 2019. Washington economic and political sabotage has left Haiti in a deplorable state. The millions of displaced peasants now make up a vast lumpen proletariat which cannot find a stable job in how they survive in the precarious informal economy. Most of them must flee the country in search of work. Hundreds of thousands flee across the border to the Dominican Republic, which has always been more receptive to foreign capital. There they find jobs, cleaning, bathroom, and anything. However, Haitians live there in a state of constant fear and instability. Their homes and communities are constantly derailed by Dominican police, soldiers, and paramilitaries. There has accelerated in the past year under the presidency of Luis Abinader. More than 31,000 people have been deported by the Dominican Republic already this year. More than 12,000 of them in just the past 3 months. Meanwhile, starting with the 2004 coup d'etat against Aristide, tens of thousands have also fled to South America, primarily to the nation of Brazil, Ecuador, Chile, and now Mexico. However, as this country have experienced economic crisis and immigration crackdown, the Haitian migrants then fly up to the continent along the Pan-American Highway, pass through the roadless, dangerous Darien Gap jungle, with Cape Colombia from Panama, and then make a perilous journey through Central America to the US-Mexican border. The result has been this quick trend like that we saw in the fall of Del Rio, Texas, where 15,000 Haitians massed on the bridge trying to enter the United States. Thousands have been returned to Haiti on about 100 ICE flights on the basis of the Trump administration excuse of rejecting asylum seekers. There are 3 elements that comprise the capitalist economy: commodities, capital, and labor. The capitalists want the free movement and the free commodity, that is free trade, as well as the free movement of the capital, that is the full repatriation of profit. But the third component, labor or workers, they don't want the free movement at all. They want to black humans and cheap labor present camps. Nations which they have destroyed through the political intervention and neoliberal economic policy. This is the industrialization are living through today. But there is a revolution brewing in Haiti. The last lumpen proletariat of Port-au-Prince and other cities is showing the first sign of autonomous self-organization. We at Haiti Liberté seek to accompany the masses by building a worker revolutionary party to lead them to the social revolution they are calling for. This alone and what can end the tragic displacement of millions of Haitians from the country. Here in the US is home to the largest Haitian immigrant population in the world, with significant numbers of undocumented workers. We must recognize and affirm immigrants as members of our community and answer their call to honor their humanity by providing all of them a pathway to citizenship. We must work to build a mass working class party. We need it here in the US in order to deepen and extend the process of working class organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Berthany. I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, David Van Dusen. David Van Dusen is the president of the Vermont AFL-CIO, based in Montpelier in Vermont. The Vermont AFL-CIO has been at the forefront of progressive class struggle, trade unionism, and social justice unionism nationwide. For example, it called on the labor movement to organize a general strike in the event that Trump refused to step down in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election. It has also taken a clear stance in support of the Palestinian liberation movement and all people oppressed by US imperialism. It has also criticized the latest betrayals by the Democratic Party in the Build Back Better Act. So thank you for being here, David. Welcome.
My pleasure. So for those of you who might not, the Vermont AFL-CIO right now is being led by our caucus called United. We are progressive. We are trying to change the way we do things in labor. And we recognize the very difficult place that all of us, be they documented workers or undocumented workers, are facing in the United States of America today. We are proud to stand with migrant justice. Migrant justice in Vermont acts as a type of labor union of all the, or most of the undocumented farm workers who labor on our dairy farms. Their activity has resulted in concrete victories for migrant workers, largely Latino and Latina on the farms. They have won dignified housing. They have won more safe and fair working conditions through organizing, despite the fact that they do not have legal status within this country. They've done this through their Milk with Dignity campaign, and the Vermont AFL-CIO has stood with them every step of the way. Part and parcel of what we are trying to do and what labor needs to do at every corner of this country is get rid of the false delineations between those workers who are documented and those workers who are not. It is only when we're divided, it is only when the ruling class is able to keep us separated in our own silos that they, the tiny minority of the population, can control the politics of our country. If we are to come together, if we are to let go of notions of xenophobia, racism, discrimination, and recognize that the truth of the matter is, which we are, in fact, one working class, then we as the great majority have the power to foundationally change what is politically possible in California, in Vermont, and across this continent and across this world. But that is a long way to go. Now, fool me once, shame on me, as the saying goes, fool me twice, I'm sorry, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We have put, meaning labor, be it advocates for those undocumented, we have put our eggs in the basket of the Democratic Party year in, year out, for decades, generations even. And other than during the Great Depression, since the time of FDR, what have we got in return? Are we going to see immigration reform from this Congress led by the Democrats? No. Anybody who thinks right now that the Democrats are going to do the right thing, you're out of your mind. They're not going to do the right thing. Is labor going to see the PRO Act pass? Absolutely not. Are we going to see fundamental changes with our voting rights being protected in the Democratic-controlled Congress? No, we won't. And there always will be an excuse saying, well, we're 2 votes short. But you know what? We're always going to be 2 votes short. You know why? Because the corporations who are behind the Democratic Party will always find those 2 folks that will be the foil to real foundational progressive legislation passing through Congress. If we continue to put our faith in a Democratic Party that takes every opportunity it can to betray us time and time again, then we become accomplices in that failure. And I say that we, together, all of us, we are better than that, and we can do better than that. Here in Vermont, after facing countless disappointments with the Democratic Party, just like we have in Washington, D.C., we have stopped. We said enough. We have said to our politicians, which is overwhelmingly Democrat in the State House, we said no more. We're going to tell you what our priorities are. And if those priorities don't move in a given year, we're done endorsing your candidates. So what have we done? We've backed folks from the Democratic Socialist Progressive Party. The Progressive Party in Vermont is a true third party with seats in the state Senate and the state House, and also has won statewide office until recently we had the lieutenant governor position. So we have lined up with them and worked with them as allies. We have worked closely with them and endorsed them in the last 3 election cycles in the city of Burlington, our largest city, where we've won, helped make them into the largest party in our largest city, with more seats on city council than any other party. And we have backed them in the general election, where we've elected representatives and state senators to the Capitol in Montpelier. So it's a long road. It is a minority party, but it's a long road. But at the same time, we cannot look at one election cycle. We cannot look at 2 election cycles, or 3, or even in 5 years from now. We need to have a long view. And we need to understand that we are not going to build power by relying on cozy relationships with the Democratic Party. We are not going to build power by putting our faith in lobbyists, be it in Washington, D.C. or in the state capitals, who wear ties and have coffee or drinks with politicians. We are, in fact, we're not going to even build power even when we back the right third party, right? That helps. It removes obstacles. But our real power is in our solidarity. Our real power is when we work together. Our real power is in the streets, in the communities, and in the workplaces. And until we recognize that, until the national AFL-CIO recognizes that, we will be stuck in this quandary of being disappointed each and every time we're asked to line up behind candidates that don't really stand with us, and then act confused when they don't deliver after they get elected. But I know we can do this. We've done this here in Vermont. We could do this in other states. And mind you, in Vermont, this took years of serious grassroots organizing and breaking down of silos. But demographically, you know what Vermont is? It is overwhelmingly rural, it is sparsely populated, and it is aging, and it is not very diverse. So demographically, we should be the most right-wing Republican state in the nation, and yet we are not. You may have heard of one of our senators here in Vermont. His name happens to be Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders years ago showed that you could break that mold. And in fact, it was through his efforts while he was mayor that the Vermont Progressive Party came to fruition. So I'm here to say that the Vermont AFL-CIO is happy to be partners with our friends from Migrant Justice. We are happy to stand shoulder to shoulder with groups like Black Perspective. We are happy to engage in the social fights that are going on right now that would impact all working people for the better if we were to be victorious. But we can't just do it in Vermont. We need this to happen everywhere in the country, and the chain of the oppression that we suffer under needs to be broken in many links. But it's not enough for us just to believe that and think that. We also have to take concrete steps to see that through. And what does that mean? That means if you're part of a community organization, if you're part of immigrants' rights groups, you need to be working with, you need to reach out to other community groups. You need to reach out to labor unions. And we need to build those relationships and that trust now. And if you're part of a union, you need to fight within your union to make it more democratic, to make it driven by social justice, and to make sure we stand with our allies, regardless of where they come from, and regardless of what their immigration legal status is. So thank you for having me today. And together, let's change what is politically possible in the world.
Thank you, David. Very powerful and a good transition to our next speaker. Building these grassroots, grassroots movements outside of Vermont and other states, and we're doing that here in California. So I'm very, very excited to present our next speaker, Marco Amaral. He's a special education teacher in San Diego. He's an elected member of the Board of Trustees for the South Bay Union School District, and an independent candidate endorsed by the laboring community for an independent party here at LSIP for California Superintendent for Public Instruction. So welcome, Marco, and pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much to all the speakers before me. Wow, what powerful words. And I'm humbled to be in this space. Thank you to the labor community for an independent party for hosting this event. And first and foremost, I want to recognize that I say the words that I say from occupied Kumeyaay land, a nation, the Kumeyaay Nation, who is divided unjustly, illegally, and inhumanely by a scar on the earth, which is our southern border. My name is Marco Amaral. First and foremost, I'm a special education teacher of 6 years. Before that, I was a classified employee in special education. I've been an activist and organizer in the major movements of the past 15 years, including the immigration movements, education movements, and the movements towards a more liberated world. I'm a special education teacher. I'm a PhD student in education, the only independently elected leftist school board member and elected official in San Diego County, and the first working teacher in California state history to run for state superintendent of public instruction. We are the first campaign for state superintendent that is truly independent and that I have never been registered with either neoliberal party since becoming 18. On the total contrary, we have always been in solidarity with the working class and the poor. I am humbled to be here today once again to first and foremost learn from my fellow comrades and to add my own sweat and grind to this struggle. We need to make sure that ICE and Border Patrol have no right to step foot on our public schools. We need to make sure that we keep our students' families united, for if we do not center our education struggle on the most basic of human rights, then it doesn't really matter, comrades, how many counselors or school psychologists our schools have if our kids are being systematically broken. A liberated public education system centers the political, social, and economic well-being of all our kids. Second to that comes whether they can solve a quadratic formula or a 5-paragraph essay. I am of the radical mindset that if a student doesn't have to worry about their family being separated, then they can come to school more likely to do well in their quadratic formulas and their 5-paragraph essays. I know, radical, right? I sound like Bernie Sanders on that one, like how he always does that whole radical, right, thing. But no, for real though, it shouldn't be a radical concept to think that our students should have the right to have their families united and to come to school with that peace of mind. I stand in solidarity with Once and For All breaking away from the Democratic Party, an institution that has, as the prior speakers stated earlier, done as much harm to our communities as the Republican Party, especially in recent memory. And that's an objective fact. I hope to contribute to an education system that seeks to abolish ICE, an education system that creates bridges across lands and deconstructs walls, and an education system that truly becomes, as Paulo Freire and Bill Hooks stated, the practice of freedom. I'm more than eager to begin the next 50 minutes to start this panel discussion, to hear questions from the beautiful comrades and community members that are on this Zoom call today. Thank you once again to LSIP for hosting this event today. Let's get this party started.
Thank you, Marco. And yeah, we're excited to show that it's possible and to do what others have said already, which is start creating the foundation for that long-term grassroots independent movement for power. So with that said, I want to introduce our last speaker on our panel, who will also be facilitating the Q&A, so we can really discuss how do we collaborate, how do we build these campaigns, how do we build more alliances across the working class, from immigrants to those who are documented. So great pleasure to introduce Connie White. She is a longtime Labor Party advocate here in the United States, a political analyst, a theorist, and a political organizer, nationally and internationally, for over 3 decades. Connie was raised in Los Angeles and was a delegate from Los Angeles to the 1996 founding convention of the Labor Party USA. Connie is a member of Labor and Community for Independent Party, part of the Continuations Committee, and an organizer for LSIP LA. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction again. I really appreciate that, Luis. I want to get right into the discussion. And so I'm going to save my comments for after the discussion, because I want to hear, if you guys know anything about me, for me, it's all a discussion. It's all a collaboration. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. And so that's why we need to work together. That's why I'm a member of the Continuations Committee of LSIP, so that we can join together, build these labor community coalitions, build this labor party in the United States, build even an international movement against imperialism and capitalism. And let's get this done. We've been talking about this for a long time. Most of us have been talking about this. I mean, what, 1996, I participated in the founding convention of the Labor Party USA. So that's a long time advocating for the Labor Party. And even before then, I was advocating for it. So let's get this discussion started. I do want to mention, though, that our last speaker, Marco Amaral, I didn't hear, maybe I missed it, but Marco Amaral is one of the first candidates that LSIP, the LSIP Continuations Committee, has recently endorsed, unanimously endorsed his campaign for superintendent of public education in California. So, if you're in California, make sure to support that campaign, hook up with it, and give whatever help you can. So let's just get this party started, okay, as Marco said, and let's get this discussion going. Anybody want to get us started? Yes, and I am so sorry about that.
I hadn't seen Desiree.
I haven't seen Desiree either. Desiree, are you here? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Desiree?
No, Desiree. That's Ray, I think.
I'm Ray.
Hey,
I'm
Ray.
sorry.
It's okay.
Desiree Rojas, Rojas. Okay, it looks like Desiree has not arrived yet. So we can give her time when she does show up, but she's not a part of the participants right now. So anybody else? You can either raise your hand, I will see you here in gallery view, or you can, okay, I see Adriana Melgoza.
Hi, thank you for all the information and for being able to give us all this amazing stuff to think about. My question is, I live in Monterey County, and it's a county of agricultural workers, and there's a lot of division between if we don't support the current proposed bills that it doesn't include Citizenship for All or Papeles para Todos, then there's this comments of, then you don't support our farm workers, you don't support our community. And so we have to fight against that narrative. Any recommendations for that?
Do I have any of the speakers or any members of the Continuations Committee who want to give a direct response to that? The response would be limited to 2 minutes. Luis?
Can I suggest, Connie, that we just go around and get discussions and questions, and then the panelist can use the 2 minutes to answer those questions at the end?
Okay, that sounds good. Since I didn't see anyone on stack, then I thought we would just go ahead and maybe start the discussion by answering her question. And I still don't see anyone on stack. If you want to raise your hand by using the hand raise feature, then you can click on, for me, it's in reactions, and then and then you could click on raise hand. But I see right now, I see Marco's hand.
Yeah, Adriana, great question. Great question. I think it's a dynamic that
Marco, you muted yourself.
Oops.
Alan, do you want me to take over interpretation? Okay, voy a tomar interpretación para Alan.
Adriana, again, sorry, great question. I think it's something that
Adriana,
many of us,
es una buena pregunta.
I think it's something that many of us go through in
Es
many
algo que
spaces.
nosotros,
Luis Angel, you have to be in the Spanish channel.
oh, sorry about that.
But I think it's important to, there's no magic, kind of swath that any of us can tell you. I think a case by case basis is a very real thing. And power and looks different in every community. And influence looks different in every community and whatnot. Nonetheless, with that being said, I think it's important for us. Go ahead.
Hey, Alan, sorry about that, Marco. I'm in the Spanish channel and it's not translating for some reason. So let's just troubleshoot this really quickly. I'm going to go into the Spanish channel and then let me know if you can hear me on the English channel.
Do people hear him on the Spanish channel?
No, he has to be made an interpreter in order for him to be interpreting, is the way I remember it. Okay. It'll work once you're made an interpreter.
Can we, yeah, continue? Yes. All right, awesome. So look, none of us can tell you, right, exactly what you should or shouldn't do. You know your context, you know your environment better than any of us do in here, and you're here for a reason. You're here for a reason, and to some extent, I believe that it's because you believe in a similar message as we all do. You have power, right? You as an individual have power. You have the power to organize, you have the power to mobilize folk as well. And at times, and I don't know, I don't know exactly what context you're in, but at times we need to, as they say, bite the bullet, but also say, give a but and say, look, right now, today, I'm going to support, for the sake of our farm workers, for the sake of those other marginalized communities that they always weaponize many times against us in order to really get true progress. But this is the final straw. This is it. You have lost me because I have power. Because like one of our speakers said before me, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? You won't fool me 3 times. And I think it's time for us to recognize that power that we have individually, but also, as all the former speakers said, collectively. And for you to take your power where you are appreciated and where you can organize towards a more truly liberated and progressive world for us all.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Marco. I see John Bryant.
You're probably in different channels. Alan, I don't know if you're speaking in the Spanish channel, but we can't hear anything in the English channel. Luis Angel, can you hear me? I think you can hear me. What? I don't know.
Luis
How that-
had left and then he just came back. I just readmitted him, so I don't know if he needs to adjust his selections.
I can see. Okay, you guys are in different channels, but you're sure you can't try again in the Spanish channel. I can actually see which channel you are in. Luis Angel is in the Spanish channel and you're in the English channel, Alan. There we go.
Thank you everybody for your
Hablando.
A ver, que hable porque no estamos escuchando.
Carlos, I
No lo
see
escucho.
you are next on the if you're going to be Juan Carlos.
That's Connie. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm in the Spanish channel. My apologies. I was just checking. That's Connie's background.
Juan Carlos is next, but he may need to be in the Spanish channel. So can someone tell him in Spanish?
Connie, why don't I go ahead and facilitate for you until if you can get rid of that beeping sound.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, so I'm gonna okay, so we're still having trouble with Luis Angel, but we have I don't know, Alan, if you're able to do. Okay.
Ya te escuchamos.
Okay,
Sí.
great. Yeah. All right. Okay, Juan Carlos. Oh, sorry, Alan, go ahead. Okay. Juan Carlos.
Quiero pedir la palabra para Liliana y después yo, los dos. Sí.
Oh, so actually Luis Angel is able to do the English translation, Alan. So if you just want to translate into Spanish, I think Luis Angel can translate into English. Great. Go ahead.
Bueno, hola a todos. Pues primero saludar y felicitarlos por este esfuerzo que es gigante, porque sabemos que el Partido Demócrata pues ha hecho una labor de plantear que es la avanzada y la única vía posible para los trabajadores cuando pues ustedes lo están diciendo que no. Y la necesidad de un partido obrero, tanto en Estados Unidos como en México, pues es una consigna muy sentida, es una consigna histórica que pues no hemos podido llevar a cabo. Pero bueno, en estos momentos, con la crisis actual que ha sido intensificada por las condiciones de la pandemia, que ha generado una pauperización de la clase obrera en todo el mundo y que también la ola de migración en todo el mundo se ha intensificado, no solo de Latinoamérica para Estados Unidos, sino que hay una crisis migratoria internacional actual por las condiciones de crisis del capitalismo. Y es por esta razón pues que los trabajadores debemos estar unidos no solo en un solo país, sino pues traspasando fronteras. Es por esa razón que estamos nosotros también participando en este foro. Yo también quiero aprovechar para comentarles que en México hace unas semanas impulsamos una reunión nacional con diferentes sectores de la clase obrera sobre la necesidad de la construcción de un partido independiente, que acá en México es complicado porque la figura de López Obrador es una figura que a pesar de tener un discurso que va dirigido a los trabajadores, a los explotados, a los vulnerables, en los hechos, sus políticas, pues están generando mayor crisis y mayores golpes a la clase obrera y que inclusive reprime a los que se quitan la venda de los ojos y intentan defender derechos laborales, derechos sindicales, o inclusive los primeros que se atrevieron a protestar fueron estudiantes y mujeres y fueron terriblemente reprimidos, ¿no? Porque tienen este discurso que es estás conmigo o estás contra mí, ¿no? Entonces no hay una salida real para los trabajadores donde nos exige el gobierno que aceptemos sus políticas nada más porque tienen un discurso que parece progresista, aunque nos golpeen, es decir, hablan bonito pero atrás esconden un bat para golpearnos. Entonces, pues es por esta razón que tuvimos esta reunión donde pues nos reunimos alrededor de 50 activistas a nivel nacional y
Juan Carlos, can you do final thoughts?
concordamos en que es necesario generar un movimiento donde discutamos con más personas de esta necesidad de un partido obrero independiente, en el cual también se discuta sobre la necesidad de respetar y buscar los derechos de las mujeres. Ok, va. Entonces, la discusión fue muy rica y pues nada más les quería compartir esta experiencia que, bueno, en México, a pesar de nuestras condiciones que también son difíciles, no son nada fáciles, pues vamos impulsándola y creo que podemos nosotros ayudar con solidaridad y pues con discusiones binacional de esta manera.
Thank you. Sorry, Don had been on the stack and I missed it. Don?
It's okay. Let's, well, did you want to let some of the panelists respond?
Oh, wait, sorry, 1 second. Alan, go ahead. No, okay.
Alan está hablando y no se le entiende.
Yep, let's finish Juan Carlos and then Don, is that all right? Great.
Yo hablo, ¿no? Hola compañeros, un saludo también. Estamos aquí desde Mexicali, en la frontera. La compañera no se presentó, pero es Liliana Plumera.
Perdón.
Creo que la reunión del día de hoy nos unifica a la clase trabajadora, no solamente de México y de Estados Unidos, sino de todo el mundo. Como decía Liliana, la crisis del sistema capitalista y en particular la pandemia, pero más atrás las políticas imperialistas, como explicó el compañero de Haití, pues están mostrando ya sus consecuencias dramáticas. Lo vemos con lo que sucede en la frontera en Bielorrusia, que no dejan cruzar a los migrantes, que el régimen polaco se opone a la migración, pero lo vemos también aquí en México, con la cuestión de la crisis migratoria, en particular con miles de haitianos. Como lo comenta el compañero haitiano, Bertoni, pues hay miles, tal vez ya decenas de miles de compañeros haitianos que están intentando cruzar por el territorio mexicano y que el gobierno mexicano ha servido a las políticas primero de la administración de Trump, sirviendo de frontera, de muro real con la Guardia Nacional, y ahora de Biden. El gobierno acaba de anunciar esta semana que se va a respaldar, y voy cerrando, el programa de Quédate en México, donde se violan los derechos humanos de miles de migrantes. Entonces creemos que la consigna de papeles para todos es muy, muy urgente en los Estados Unidos, pero que también tendríamos que desarrollar una consigna de lucha en el caso de México para que se facilite el derecho de asilo para todos los que lo soliciten. Es todo.
Thank you. Thank you, Juan Carlos. We have Don and then Ray.
Thank you. I would like to see us talk about unifying some of the struggles, Black lives, Brown lives, Palestinian lives, immigrant lives, I think we would be such a mighty force. Of course, the mass incarceration affects all of these communities from United States to Israel. So I'd like to see us consider that unity as a powerful force. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Ray?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're asking that on the English channel. So do you want to ask on the Spanish channel?
Hola a todos, mi nombre es Rey de Nueva York. Soy de las mejores huellas de los inmigrantes. Y mi pregunta es a todos los panelistas y compañeros. En la Unión Americana o en Estados Unidos, ¿estaremos listos ahora para dar un ultimátum a el gobierno de Estados Unidos y decirles, mostrarles que somos un poder, una fuerza, somos obreros, somos campesinos y que tenemos el poder? Si estuviéramos listos a estas alturas para darles a ellos 2 meses para que resuelvan este problema. Si no lo resuelven en 2 meses, podríamos decirles a ellos, les damos 3 meses más o paramos la producción del país y entonces mostramos nuestro poder como fuerza laboral. Me pregunto yo, ¿estaremos listos para eso o tenemos que seguir moviéndonos, haciendo paneles, organizándonos? Gracias.
Okay, the floor is open. Who else would like to speak?
Yo, Yurina, solamente estoy preguntando si los panelistas podemos opinar o no podemos.
I'm sorry, Luis Angel, you broke up, so I didn't get the translation. Okay, great, thank you. Yes, panelists can go ahead and jump on. Yurina, is your hand raised again, Yurina? Okay, go for it.
Ahora mismo quiero decirle a los compañeros de México, Papeles para Todos está apoyando a los trabajadores de
Luis Angel,
Sudnotimex.
you're cutting out a little bit. I don't know if you can get closer to your microphone or something.
Okay. Sí. Ahora mismo quiero decirle a los compañeros de México que Papeles para Todos está apoyando a los huelguistas de Sudnotimex porque sabemos la represión que han enfrentado con el gobierno de López Obrador. Entonces fue cuando nosotros empezamos a pensar que tenemos que estar unidos y que la clase trabajadora es la que tiene el poder. Y vamos a seguir apoyando. Estamos apoyando aquí también a los compañeros de los trabajadores de la comida rápida que están siendo más explotados durante la pandemia. Nosotros también apoyamos en su momento a los compañeros de Las Vidas Negras Importan. Estos movimientos.
Luis Angel and Yurina, there's still an issue with the English translation. Luis Angel, you keep breaking in and out. I'm not sure if it's a microphone problem or a second translator problem, but I'm not sure. Yes. Okay.
No sé si quieran que continúe. ¿Ya escuchan a Luis Ángel?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Luis Angel, but the second interpreter is not working. So Alan's just volunteered to take back over so we can understand. So thank you. Sorry, it's not working out.
No sé si puedo continuar, Luis Ángel, para finalizar lo que quiero decir. Porque no escucho a Luis Ángel.
And Alan,
sí te escucho, Benjamín.
Okay, Alan, you need to go back in the English room.
Sí, no sé hasta dónde se quedaron. Sí. Sí. Ya. Entonces, ¿puedo continuar? Solo avísenme si puedo continuar. Ok. Bueno, como decía, Papeles para Todos apoyó en su momento a los compañeros de Las Vidas Negras Importan. Y en conjunto, nuestro pensamiento es, el gobierno de los Estados Unidos nos saca de nuestro país para venir a esclavizarnos acá y para aprovecharse de nuestro estatus de indocumentado. Haber hecho esta Junta General, habernos conocido por medio de nuestras experiencias vividas, creo que ha sido lo que más nos ha impulsado a ir adelante, a seguir apoyando estos sectores. Entonces, algo que ya estamos nosotros trabajando es el apoyo internacional a los compañeros huelguistas de la Ciudad de México. Y creo que vamos a ir más adelante porque podemos entender otra vez que solo no vamos a resolver este problema. Este problema abarca bastante, ¿verdad? Y queremos juntos movilizarnos, educarnos y saber que solamente un partido independiente de la clase trabajadora va a hacer quebrar esta esclavitud a las que nos tienen obligados a estar o nos quieren estar obligados a estar. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. More speakers?
Can I chime in?
Yes, please.
Look, I grant that you can't get to the core of the matter in a reasonable way in an hour or two. But it's one thing to say we need our own party. I think that anybody that's been paying attention, who's on the left, who's been paying attention to the Democrats, would agree about that. It would be hard to argue against. But that's a meaningless statement in and of itself. Right now, there are probably 24 socialist parties in the United States alone, right? Tiny, fractured, and quasi-religious, a quarter of them, in their dogmatic interpretation of where we need to go. That's a far cry from a mass workers' party of any kind. And also, let's be clear, in the AFL-CIO, which is by far the largest labor federation in this country, while delegates at times may pass resolutions, what they did a couple of years ago, in support of the idea of a third party, the national AFL-CIO leadership has put exactly zero effort into actually building that. So unless we're talking about the actual nuts and bolts of how from one state to another state and then federated, a real grassroots party can be built that supports working people, migrant workers, et cetera, then all we're doing is virtue signaling. So it's much more complex than just saying we need a new party. The question is, how do we achieve it? I don't pretend to have those answers, but I would encourage folks to look at the history of the Vermont Progressive Party and how that was built over a couple decades into a real, non-marginalized, serious force in this state.
Thank you, Connie, and then Millie, and then Alan.
That was such an important comment that you made. David, right? David Van Dusen, that's your name? Okay. Because in LSIP, we also agree with you that if you read the LSIP statement of purpose, one of the things that we talk about just a little in terms of the 2 points that we have come together around, and that is, and those we believe, as we work out those 2 points, as we organize, for example, labor and community coalitions, we do advocate and believe in issue-based organizing in terms of those labor community coalitions. And we're talking about local coalitions, local labor community coalitions that, that not only advocate the building of an independent working class party, but also advocate that these assemblies, these coalitions that we are trying to organize, that are the base for the Labor Party, that they also are the base that holds any candidates that we endorse, that we put forth for what I call the halls of governance, that these coalitions are also, and assemblies, they are also the, they are the ones that hold the candidates accountable. So it's not just that we're talking about building a labor party, but that we are trying to get to the nuts and bolts of how to do that. And we would really love for your area to be organized by the Vermont Party. Is that what you call yourself? The Vermont Party?
No, it's in Vermont, we have the Vermont Progressive Party. It was founded by Bernie Sanders when he was mayor of Burlington.
Oh, okay, I see. So I'm not speaking for the continuations committee, but in this discussion, I'm saying that, hey, that sounds like, hey, join in with us in terms of organizing in your area, continuing to do your organizing the way you do for the Vermont Progressive Party, and then build that labor community coalition that will become the part or the base in Vermont for building the Labor Party. Because we're not just talking about, join LSIP and everything's going to be, good. We know it all and all, No, we don't know it all. That's why we advocate the building of these labor community coalitions and assemblies. The other thing, other part of our statement of purpose is that we build caucuses within labor unions that will advocate for the clean break of the labor movement with the Democratic Party and promote the building of these labor community coalitions in those local areas.
Thank you. It's Millie, Allen, and then Maya. I don't know if you took your hand down for a reason, but if you didn't, you're third. So Millie.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, Connie said a good part of what I was going to say also as a member of the Continuations Committee of LSIP. I wanted to address part of what David asked, though, in that the idea of LSIP came out of the work of a lot of people who had been involved with the Labor Party in the 90s. For example, I was the vice chair of the Bay Area Labor Party in the 1990s. And we learned some very painful lessons from that work. Some of us have also been in left organizations and parties that we learned some painful lessons as well. So we are committed to learning from the mistakes that similar movements made. And one of those lessons we learned from the Labor Party, and specifically, was that trust has to be built between labor and other communities. Labor itself is diverse, contains every race and gender and nationality and immigrant status, etc. But if the labor movement isn't in alliance with movements of marginalized communities, and in alliance with people who are struggling, who are not in unions, if it's not committed to organizing in that way and showing its solidarity, why would people support a Labor Party? So we saw in the Labor Party that there was not enough attention paid to the demands of people even within the party who made those kind of demands on the leadership of the Labor Party. So that's one lesson we learned. We also have learned, around the ideas of, parties that were sectarian or narrow based and that didn't know how to speak to the working class in a general sense, didn't know how to, address working class issues in a way that made sense and sounded like normal conversation. So that's something that some of us have experienced too and have learned from. And our goal here is like as Connie was saying, is to sort of start a party, not immediately, but on the basis of local organizing around the country. And if local organizing around the country becomes successful enough, then out of that could come a party. Not from the top down, not declared, like the People's Party recently was declared itself a party. We're more interested in starting those conversations and community building that will accomplish exactly what you said yourself about needing to bring people together across all these differences. And that's not an instant process, and we all know that. But it's one that we have tried to bypass most of our lives, as activists, and it doesn't work to bypass that process. We have to actually do it. So that's at least how I look at LSIP, at the vision of LSIP, is making sure that we develop that base for a party before we actually try to start one.
Thank you. Alan, you're next. How do you want to do your translation? You're in the Spanish channel, so. Okay, great.
Tampoco nosotros lo escuchamos, Luis Ángel. No lo escuchamos, Alan.
For English participants, Alan is translating in the Spanish channel. And thank you for your patience with this translation issue.
Thank you, Alan. Was it Marco next? Yes.
Was I next? I thought it was like Mia was next.
Yes, Maya withdrew.
Maya. Oh, okay. Sorry for mispronouncing your name, Maya. Yeah, let me get a crack at this question. I also wanted to get a crack at Ray's question about, it seemed like it was hinging on the topic of I also wanted to respond to Ray's inquiry about what seemed to be a question of a general strike of sorts. So at the risk of seeming California-centric, and obviously because I live in California and I'm running for a state office here in California, I think it's really important what Millie stated earlier, also what Connie stated earlier, and in general, the roadmap, if you will, that LSIP is attempting to put forward, which is a roadmap that our campaign is attempting to emulate in many ways. I'm not registered with any leftist party. I am openly a socialist and internationalist, specifically. But I think that right now we need to focus on organic coalition building and mass organic coalition building. And so that is why, for example, our campaign, and I'm not here trying to say that our campaign should be the model or anything like that, okay? I'm simply giving it as an example. Our campaign proudly has received the endorsement of LSIP. And at the same time, it has sought the endorsement and has received the endorsement of many other leftist, socialist, progressive organizations, such as, but not limited to, right? We are seeking in the process of many, but such as the Green Party, right? Such as the Peace and Freedom Party, such as DSAs, right? Such as PSLs, right? Such as even the African People's Socialist Party, such as Unión del Barrio, right? So on and so forth, right? To really create a leftist electoral coalition like there never has been before. And so what we are asking people to do is to not, for once, right, to not be as sectarian, as religious, I think someone said before, to understand that our freedom will not come via the electoral box, too, right? That our freedom and our liberation will come through mass mobilization on the streets, where I think where it's going into what Ray was stating. But once we create these mass mobilizations, the beauty of what the electoral process can give us is a number.
Hi,
Now,
Mark, are you able to wrap up your thoughts?
Go ahead, thank you. Now, I'm a qualitative guy, but I'm also a quantitative guy. And the electoral process can give us a number. Now, California is the largest, potentially the largest leftist community space, if you will, in the country. If in the end of this election, our final tally, our final vote, we're in it to win it, obviously. But if at the end of our election, we see that we got 2 million votes, 3 million votes, whatever that be, 5 million votes, then therefore we now have a truly organic number of what our power looks like, right? As a leftist electoral coalition that can foment real systemic change. Now, real quick into what Ray was saying, I think that through that, we can then use that power to bring about true general strikes, true mass mobilizations, right? Can you imagine what a world of what we saw last year with the movement for Black Lives, if that meshed in with what Occupy could have been, right? If those two things collided together, what that could look like. and the potential that can bring for us, I think that this electoral process can lead us towards something like that. That's 5 million numbers that we can call. That's, millions of people that we have direct access to. And so with that being said, I know I'm over time. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask, I know we're right at time, and we want to give other of the, in addition to people on the stack, the speakers in 2 minutes, if they would like to join into the discussion and close out their remarks also for 2 minutes. Could people stay another, say, 20 minutes? I think that'll do it, and then allow us to wrap up. Seem okay? Well, if you can't, it's recorded. So then you can come back and catch the end of it. Okay. So we have Victor, and then, I'd like to encourage the speakers to jump on the stack and say their closing remarks also another 2 minutes. And in about 10 or so minutes, we'll move to closing remarks.
Maya was next, I thought.
Maya withdrew, unless.
Thank you.
Victor?
Well, thank you. My name is Victor Nieto. I am the interim chairperson of the People's Party in Florida. We're a registered party and official, and we're since September. From now, we've got over 200 people that have changed their party registration in Florida to the People's Party. I am in complete agreement with everything I have heard here tonight. I am an immigrant myself. I'm a retired railroad worker that lives in Miami, and I have a lot to say about the process of a path to citizenship. I think that everybody, every working person in this country deserves the right to access citizenship, with no problem. The way that I did, but again, the fight to win citizenship for all immigrants will not get anywhere by depending on the Democratic or Republican parties. They have created these, especially the Democratic Party created these organizations that are funded by the same people that rule this country, that make sure that people do not have access to citizenship. So I'm glad that Papeles, the Papeles para Todos exists, and hopefully I can find them here in Florida to do work together with them. We need to join together. I think the model of the labor unions, and I was a union local president, the railroad. I also belong to the Railroad Workers United. I think that the model that everybody, Democrats, Republicans, independents, no party affiliation people, everybody inside the union works together with one single goal, and that is to get a good contract.
Victor, are you able to?
So I'm going to wrap up real quick. I think that we should all be in a single party or a coalition of parties that do not take corporate money. And I think that those people that are fighting for immigrant rights should join up and join one of the organizations, or try to create a coalition of everybody so that we can all work together. I commend the LSIP for the work that they've been doing, and I would like to work together with them as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, so, and also again, speakers, Luis Angel, if you have closing remarks or. Yep, I know. I'm just going in the order which they spoke, and then I'll call. Oh. I don't think Alan can hear you, so he's talking to me. So Luis Angel is speaking. Alan. Oh, no, now you're back. I think Luis Angel, you're in a different channel now because I can't hear you. Yeah, that's definitely true. Alan was suggesting that we go in reverse order, but since you already started speaking, please continue. Thank you, Luis Angel. Yurina? Yurina, would you like to speak, give your closing remarks for 2 minutes?
Sí, claro que sí, disculpe. Lo que pasa es que no escuché nada de lo que dijo Luis Ángel, se fue todo el sonido.
Luis Angel, could you give brief remarks in Spanish? Yes, please.
Gracias.
Thanks everyone in the English channel for your patience. I think it's only fair that everyone get to hear Luis Angel's closing remarks. Don, drop that fundraising thing in the chat if people need something to do while we're waiting. Yes, in Spanish, on the Spanish channel. Okay. Okay, are you okay? Thank you so much. Thanks, Luis Angel. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. Yurina, if you would give 2 minutes closing remarks, please.
Muchísimas gracias, al igual que mi compañero Luis Ángel y mis compañeros presentes de Papeles para Todos. Como indocumentada, los desafíos son muy grandes, pero las historias nos unen. No por cualquier razón estamos aquí, porque ya nos dimos cuenta, identificamos cuál es la razón por la cual tenemos que levantarnos. Las personas que marcharon en 2006 se dieron cuenta que el poder que tuvieron para traer los cambios. Entonces espero también seguir colaborando. Los invitamos a la reunión de Papeles para Todos. Todos son bienvenidos. Por favor, contáctenos si tienen oportunidad. A donde podamos estar, ahí vamos a estar. A donde podamos apoyar, ahí vamos a apoyar. Queremos hacer esta conexión. Queremos seguir trabajando y sobre todo educándonos, ¿verdad? haciendo estas conexiones educativas. Entonces, por favor, estamos a su disposición para trabajar. Que viva la clase trabajadora, que la lucha obrera es la verdadera y queremos papeles para todos, porque vamos a llegar a eso, porque se puede, porque estamos y porque vamos a poder. Muchísimas gracias, compañeros, que la lucha no cese y que sigamos adelante. Gracias.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Joe, would you like to give closing remarks? 2 minutes? Okay. All right, Bertoni? Bertoni still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
And
2 minutes closing remarks, please. Thank you.
yes, okay. It was a pleasure to be with you, with meeting, and I expect to be part of the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, David.
The Democratic Party is not our friend. I'm preaching to the choir on this. But building a third party will be a long, hard road. We need to do this. But we can't pretend that just building that party alone solves our problems. The fact is, it's on the ground organizing in the communities and in the workplaces and building solidarity among each other, which is going to deliver real power to working people. The parties be damned. And frankly, even the political parties that are against us in Washington now could be brought to their knees if our solidarity was strong enough. But they're not going to do what we need them to do because they respect us or agree with us. They will do that when they fear us. So let's build a united movement. Let's build working class power and let's change the world. Solidarity.
Thank you. Okay, and finally, Marco, and then we'll have closing remarks by Connie. And really quick, yeah, go ahead, Marco.
Everything that Yurina said. Everything that Yurina said, for sure. And with your permission, I would humbly, I'm humbly asking if I'm permitted to put down my donation link in the comment section. This is a working class campaign. I'm the first working teacher in state history to run for this position. Everyone on our campaign, those that work for our campaign get paid $35 per hour. We are accepting that our campaign be unionized, or that our workers are unionized. And we are truly here to transform public education for every single child, for every single family member, and for every single community, because we truly do believe that education is the practice of freedom. Thank you very much, and I'll post it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. So there's 2 fundraising buttons in the chat, and I urge people to contribute to both, not only Marco's campaign, which is hugely important and was just unanimously endorsed by Labor and Community for an Independent Party. We also have a direct fundraising link for LSIP so that we can continue to grow this movement, continue to have forums like this, continue to build labor and community coalitions and reach out to people, community and labor in every corner of the country to start and continue and grow this movement. And it takes funds, it takes people, and it takes money. That's just the world we live in. So I urge people to contribute what they can, contribute generously as much as you're able to both of those links that are in the chat. All right, closing remarks. Connie White, please take it away.
Hey. And I'm sorry for that beeping earlier. I was so oblivious, so tuned in to the forum, I did not even hear it. I mean, I sort of heard it, but until Coral said something, I was like, oh, okay, it is beeping in the back. So I appreciate the patience that you guys had with me. But there are so many things that have been said here. And I actually addressed some of what I wanted to say in terms of closing remarks and what I earlier said. So what I want to do is just sort of read to people the statement of purpose for LSIP. We political, trade union, and community activists from different political backgrounds, have decided to constitute ourselves as the Labor and Community for an Independent Party, LSIP, with two intertwined objectives. Our first objective is to promote running independent labor community candidates beginning in 2020. At that time, it said 2020, but it has been revised. I'm looking at our old version, I think, at a local and state level around a platform that embraces workers and communities' pressing demands. Now, that part of our statement of purpose really addresses, I think, what David Van Dusen spoke to, as well as what other people spoke to in terms of organizing at the grass levels. LSIP tends to embrace the issue-based organizing efforts that people are engaged in now. And what we advocate is bringing those issue-based organizing, your organizing, your organizations, bringing them together into a labor community coalition or assembly that you organize in your local area that will advocate the building at the grassroots level of a labor party nationally, but begins with building at the grass levels in your local area. So to continue, the explicit aim is to advance the effort to build a mass working class party rooted in unions, youth, and communities of the oppressed. The platforms of these independent candidates need to be discussed and approved by the labor community assemblies, and the candidates must be answerable to these assemblies and to the coalitions formed for this purpose. Now, I think that comment speaks directly to what David Van Dusen reminds us, is that we are not talking about winning freedom, if you will, or advocating for working class issues just by building the Labor Party, or just by putting representatives, let's say, in Congress. But because we don't believe that our, quote, freedom is going to be won just at the ballot box. We are talking about building that grassroots organizing and building that, which we have all on this call anyway, on this Zoom meeting, all of us have been involved in that local organizing, that grassroots organizing. So that's what our statement of purpose says is our first objective. Our second objective is to promote widely in the trade union movement a committee or committees that advocate for a labor-based political party. A resolution was adopted by the October 2017 National Convention of the AFL-CIO that affirmed that, quote, whether the candidates are elected from the Republican or the Democratic Party, the interests of Wall Street have been protected and advanced, while the interests of labor and working people have generally been set back. And so these are the 2 points on which LSIP is built right now. And I would just ask each and every one of you who have attended this and participated in this Zoom meeting to seek out and begin to organize in your local area. Begin to organize an LSIP labor community coalition, and reach out to us and get this this organizing effort done. Because as David reminded us, it's going to take some effort, it's going to take some time, and this is the time. We are the ones that we've been waiting for.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the speakers, both in the discussion and also our wonderful list of guest speakers. And thank you all for taking time out to grow this movement and to participate. I think it's been a fantastic meeting, and I hope this isn't the last we hear from any of you, and we continue to work together and fight on. So thanks so much.
Could the continuations committee members stay on? Thank you.
Yep, let's stay on, everyone. Thank you, the continuations committee. Thank you, Alan, for the amazing translation.
Thank you, Alan.
That was awesome.
Okay, Alan, you may need to be in the English channel for us to hear you. I can't hear you.
No, it was great. It was
No,
really
not
great.
too much.
Very
Not too
good.
much.
I can't believe you attempted.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. We tested it out and I don't.
So if you try, they mess up your microphone. This seems weird.
Yes, they were very patient. Oh, let me stop this recording.
Yeah, sounds good.
We're gonna have to have somebody to say